Hey everyone, today we're going to be discussing Model G versus Model A. And oh yeah, and I'm going to do this with Ben Vaserlan, also known as Ben David. Ben David is very well known in Model G circles, probably one of the most prolific proliferators of Gulenko's model of Socionics. So he's going to be showing us a bit about Model G today, and then we're going to be discussing it, seeing if it holds up to scrutiny, and seeing if Model A holds up to scrutiny.
Yeah, and as a little preview, we can sort of say that both models need to be held up to a bit of scrutiny when it comes to scientific verification, which is something we'll get into later on, because I have a surprise for you. Right. But in terms of the... So look there, look. Your channel has been recommended.
Oh, lovely.
So hopefully you will return the favor.
Oh.
Right, so this is just what's on my channel. There you go. People can see what's on screen. I don't need to read it out. But then again, Type Pattern Pros, if you're interested. Viktor Gulenko, the man of the moment, 21 videos with him. Just move this up because people can see this.
Okay. So
and then
would you be able to just tell us a little bit about Model G to start off with?
Right. I'll just get there's my then I'll Model G. Well, Model G. Well, Model A is arranged in a supervision ring, as you know, and two ones which rotate in different. Let's go over here. Here we go. We've got Model A on the left, or I've rather chiefly called it modulators. And then we've got Model G. You've got a supervision ring here where it goes like this. And then one that goes like that. And people can see that it's a mirror image from and you've got the mental and the vital rings. You're the king of Model A, Jack, in English.
So the idea of the supervision ring is the idea of, for instance, take an ILE, which is the model presented here with Model A, ILE, ENTP for more MBTI-oriented people, though their types aren't exactly the same. Now, you can see that ILE supervises the LSI. And so you see NE and TI over there, extroverted intuition, introverted logic. That would supervise LSI, which would be introverted logic and extroverted sensation. And as you can see, you've got in slot 1 and 2, NETI, but then slot 2 and 3, TISE. So that would be the information elements of an LSI. But then, if you follow it around in this loop, you can see that SE ends up next to FI, which are the functions, the information elements of an SEE, because the LSI supervises the SEE. And then we get to EII, FI-NE, because FI is then next to NE. And then it goes around in circle again, so EII supervises ILE. So that is what we call a supervision cycle.
I have graphics on that. So one of the points that Jack mentioned was vertical blocking. Here is also the supervision ring for the causal determinists, where you have SEE there. So you can see the ring.
So sorry, what is also the supervision ring, Ben?
This.
So this is Model G?
Model G, you have to think outside of the box.
Good.
But that's because this is part of the arrangement of Model G, the vertical arrangement. And something else, and you mentioned supervision rings. Oh, that's the benefit ring. There's a supervision ring. And this is also linked up with forms of cognition, but I don't know how kosher this is for all socionists. The supervision rings.
Okay, I guess what people are just trying to establish here, just for the sake of the audience, why are we showing these rings? What's the point of it?
Because you brought up supervision rings.
I did, but why? But why is this going to help the audience for understanding Model G?
Good point, because you mentioned that Model A is arranged in a supervision ring. I'm just showing that Model G is secondarily arranged like that. It's just less obvious. And as I said, So we've got a certain sequence to get through.
Oh,
so
fair enough. Fair enough. Go on.
This is just Elena's. This website is Elena and Viktor.
Yep.
aimtoknow.com. This is Viktor's website, Socionics. Where's the URL?
Okay.
Anyway, people know what that is.
Yeah.
This is somebody who's helped me a little bit.
Mitchell.
Verlawend. And so he's got a blog there, and he'll be writing about this event. So if people want to know more about Model G, that is the blog of David Mark Kersey, who is LII a lot. Now, this is something you brought up, because we can get into it now with the experimental, because we can get into the background with it, with the experiments about how model.
Okay.
So you said here, what's this? Ben didn't have an answer to that, but I wouldn't expect one. It's more something you have if you have a science degree, like this. I did applied biology. Anyway, it's not about my credentials.
Oh, fantastic.
And I did intermediary metabolism, and it was boring.
Well, Ben, I apologize for implying you didn't have a science degree.
But you're right. The reason why I couldn't answer that is I did not have all of the data available. And this is something which comes up from Viktor, is basically the experiments with Socionics are rubbish from a proper science point of view, in that we don't get the independent tester.
Right. Okay. So when you say this is more scientific, what is the science behind it?
Wait a minute. When did I say it's more scientific?
No, you said it's more scientific. What is the science behind it?
No, when did I? What did I say was more scientific?
Well, you said you put together the data to establish this idea of a Model G as more support.
Oh, no. I was just saying that the way we're doing it is that we can look through the issues with like the research that was done and the limitations of it. I'm not going to pretend it's great stuff.
Yeah.
And this gives people some background, because Model G is a part of humanitarian socionics. It builds on other concepts. One of the things that people might be almost alarmed by is all this stuff with functional charges and where that comes from, and the fact that that relates to left versus right spinors, i.e. results and process types.
Yes.
And this bit here is a little bit cheeky, but it just shows you the sort of like the quarrels that you get between the different schools of socionics.
Well, one thing I just want to say for the audience, sorry for interrupting, but I just want to make sure you're on the same page as us. So process result is a rein-in dichotomy. It's a rein-in capability. There's other dichotomies, different types. Certain types are known as process types. Other types are known as result types. And so this idea is something which Gulenko has taken in his creation of Model G.
Yeah. There's no point in me reading that out, because people have already seen it. And it will slow things up. And here's a little bit of his point of view. And again, here saying it's not great with the science. And I've got reports where he talks about his own experiments and that, because I've taken screen grabs. I've got some good information from.
Fair enough. Because what I would like to see for these experiments is the methodology, how it was done.
Yeah, it's not. I'll just show you what, and I've also. Yeah. I'm going to try and get an experiment translated by Andre. It's quite a long one. It's one that was done in 2013 on Vertness.
Andre Kunin.
Pardon?
Which Andre?
Andre Y. I list him as the interpreted some profiles.
Okay.
So this guy, Kirill Kravchenko, he basically uses Viktor's school of socionics. And I think this bit is true, that his focus, and he resembles LSI, that the main focus of socionics was the improvement of the relations. And that's why there's a big focus on these small groups. And we'll get into that in a moment. This we'll look at the end. These are the points that Jack brought up and me rebutting them. Right, I'm just going to mention a little bit about what Ausra said about energy, and then we'll get on to the experiment stuff, which is this slide here. So this is the thing where Ausra mentioned energy quite a lot. And
okay, yeah,
right,
which would also make sense because Kapitsky talked about energy.
yeah, but we'll get into that because
I mean, Kapitsky talked about energy metabolism and said that it was the idea of how we digest food.
yes, but this is a different kind of energy. This is psychic energy.
Psychic energy.
Not the kind of stuff I was doing in my degree with intermediary metabolism and Krebs TCA cycle.
But could you tell me a bit about what exactly psychic energy entails?
Well, I've got that in slides.
Okay, fair enough.
There's part of a sequence because I want to show the stuff on the experiments. You're keen on the experiments.
Yes.
And then the benefit. So we do all the stuff with the group, and then there's loads of stuff on energy because I've added new notes. So here. So you can see, and then this is one of the things that we'll get to later on, because a big issue that we had in the first event was comparing mobilizing and suggestive in terms of these, when we're using metrics of information and how it's very nuanced, and that's then part of the paper. Right, so that's a preview. We'll come back to that. We've already looked at that.
Okay.
Now this is part of the arrangement of Model G and the sort of like the premises that it's built on. So I'll read this out for the audience.
Yes.
Why Model G is arranged differently from Model A. Ausra made the claim that the Socion develops thanks to relations of social benefit. Relations of social benefit supply him with cutting-edge human experience and enable the mobilization of the most developed elements of the psyche of each person for the use in accordance with the emerging needs of society, like focusing intellectual energy into a sharp ray, into a focused laser beam. Right, and then I'll say, Andre, for energy metrics, which we'll get to later on, because this is just the preview for the benefit ring stuff. For energy metrics, see the inflation avoidance block. Right, and then, so why does the psyche of an individual line up differently? It is logical to suggest that internally the psyche is moved by the social benefits, not a revision. Or we can make the following conclusion, syllogistic inference, that on a social level, the energy component has a priority over the information component. Experiments on rings of social benefits by Schechter and Kobrinskaya showed that there is an activation within a group, increasing levels of activity. Now, what I will say, Vic, there's a little bit of bias there, a little bit of LII bias, in that LII is a want to do this thing about scalability. And you get a lot of that on David Mark Kersey's blog, where they think a structure will repeat on different levels. So you see Victor's got it there, where he thinks, well, the benefit ring on the social level should repeat in the mind.
Yes.
And
there is no good basis for that.
Yeah, but there's no actual, I'm just saying that's a bias of LII.
No, fair enough. But okay, so we've talked about this experiment. Will we be exploring the methodology of this experiment by Schechter and Kobrinskaya?
I will show you what is available, and then we can. But
fine.
It's not fantastic, right?
Because the entire basis of a reason for having this model in the first place.
Well, no. Well, the thing is, it's a lot of observations by Viktor as well. But if you're going to come at it from the angle of, oh, we need scientific proof, I can really turn that around at you, Jack, and say, hang on a minute, you've had 40 years in Model A land to come up with some experiments to validate things.
No, but there is an empirical observation, which is the entire basis of this. Whereas for Model A, it's about a very careful deduction from basic axiom.
Yeah, well, wait, you're framing it as that. You're framing it as it's coming from this. But there's also deduction going on with Model G. Because they know about these relations. It's not solely based on, because I know you framed the video as, oh, Viktor looked at this paper on benefit rings and decided to create a model based on it. That's not, LIIs don't work like that.
Okay,
right.
But where is the deduction? Because it looks to me as if a deduction is based on faulty bases, such as the process result dichotomy, which, as we know, is hard to actually deduce from the very basic dichotomies of information and function.
Well, in a moment, I'll go through the information I have. You see all these slides? These all have to do with experiments, what I could gather. Okay. What I got from both Viktor and from other sources.
Okay. Because Ben, just at this point, right? The whole basis of Model A is that information can be categorized in certain ways. And if you look at each of the dichotomies for why they're categorized in certain ways, say external versus internal, or something being objectively shareable or interpreted, it seems pretty straightforward. It's quite hard to deny. But it seems from this that the reason for this coming about is that there is a certain psychic energy that occurs when you put all members of the benefit cycle together.
But the information aspect that you described is part of the model. That's why I showed you the stuff with the supervision rings before. And also, you need to remember who came up with the forms of cognition, which is all about supervision rings and all about information metabolism. Viktor Gulenko.
Okay. Right. But so, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's correct here.
But I need to show the evolution. We will go through the evidence.
And also, regardless of the supervision rings that do occur in Model A, they do occur in Model A. That is not the emphasis, the focus for how anyone actually uses Model A, at least in the West. We talk about the strength of information elements, the value of them, and Model A happens to have a good way of presenting many different function dichotomies together and coming together to form an understanding of the type.
Right, I will move on. So I'll just give you an introduction to the experiment, and then the next ones are about, actually the next two slides are about Viktor and his experiments and the difficulties that he's had. And then I will actually show you this experiment that's been referred to, because last time I didn't have it. And if it's not got all the details there, don't blame me. That's their fault. Right. Right, so what we got here? Okay, so basically what we got here. Experiments on the social ring by Schechter and Kobrinska showed that there is activation within a group, increasing levels of activity. Once this group gets activated, members feel and act as one. According to the same experiments, inside rings of revision, opposite is observed. The group decelerates, activity plummets, wariness accumulates, and cause of exhaustion and illness. Well, and then I'll get going with this bit. Such groups tend to break apart. Then why should interactions between individual functions within the framework get in the way of productivity and extinguish the energy of the psyche? Right, okay. So he's thinking if you arrange it in a supervision ring, then it's going to cause a log jam. That's a bit of a TI argument.
Fine, but no one in Model A suggests that you should be putting together supervision rings. We talk about people being in the same quadra rather than being in the supervision ring being an especially good outcome. And it doesn't necessarily make any more sense for benefit to make it be a good outcome. Well, maybe, and let's assume it is a good outcome if you happen to have a benefit cycle together. If you say you have to find an ILE, you have to find an EIE, an SCE, and you have to find a, hang on, which one was it again? Hang on, LSE, yeah, LSE as well. So you put all those four together, right? So you have to almost force that situation. It doesn't happen very often, very naturally for those four to get together. And then all that needs to happen is one to drop out, and suddenly you lose that benefit cycle again. And you see how precarious it is, because each type can provide a little bit in a not entirely desirable way of the other person's suggestive, but they can't do it back.
I've got loads of slides on that. I've got loads of slides on that after the experiment stuff, which you were big on in the previous event.
I'm big on many, many things.
Right, big on many things, and it's all been sequenced.
Many about this.
Right. So, what was his point? He did one of these scalable things again. Yes, he did a scalable. Him thinking on different scales in terms of, well, in a supervision ring, the information doesn't flow very well, but Model A is arranged in a supervision ring. And anyway, that's a little bit TI, but I'll go here. Right, so he thinks it gets in the way. The other stuff there, we're going to come back to that because this is the lead into the experiments. Now, what I thought I would do is I would put Viktor in talking about these experiments, and then I'll put the actual paper in, which is this one here that says small groups. It didn't pop up on your end. So do you want to read that out and comment on it?
Okay. So Gulenko's idea is an experimental verification of order rings.
That's social benefit, folks.
Okay. Most often, I conduct experiments with energy rings during Socionics seminars and training courses. The difficulty lies in the fact that it is almost impossible to assemble people of a right type to compose 4 rings of an order with the time and material and organizational resources we have. Yep, that's right. Okay. In addition, for successful and clearly convincing experiments, the types of participants must have a brighter contrasting profile. Otherwise, all patterns will be blurred. We almost never have such a picture. Therefore, it is necessary to make a compromise and conduct an experiment either with groups that are incomplete in composition or number, or with volunteers with appropriate accentuated functions. There is also a certain middle variant when partially there are representatives of the necessary types and partially not, and then their functional substituents are used instead of the missing types. So in other words, why bother?
Well, I mean, are you making perfect the enemy of the good?
No, I'm saying, well, yes, perfect is the enemy of the good here. How is this meant to be a model which helps anyone if you can never get these people together, and it's difficult even in a controlled experiment?
It's not solely based on that. I mean, I could turn it around with Model A. Here's more. It is amusing to call it the fact test.
It seemed like such a peripheral point, but placed in a strange point of importance. Almost like in the story of the Mikado, of the Lord High Executioner, taken from the county jail by a set of curious chances.
But at least you've got Viktor trying to do things with experiments. His issue is getting others to reproduce them. And he mentions about the fact, because he says that, hey, I'm interested. I've got an interest in this. I need people to, but it's difficult to get people to reproduce his experiments. But Model A is a lot more popular. Why haven't they had experiments that have been reproduced?
But this is the entire basis of the model for why it should even be offered. It's not.
That's how you're framing it. That's how you're framing it. You're framing it as this model is based on just these experiments.
Well, I mean, he's clearly.
Well, why is there a different rule for Model G than for Model A?
Well, because Model A is based on logical axioms about how you classify different sorts of information and how people vary in their metabolism of these different kinds of information, which is a very straightforward and actually quite a useful way of looking at how personality is likely to differ.
Okay. What I can say, I can reframe it like this. Model A has grown out of Model A. Model G has grown out of Model A and has accomplished this information aspect, which I'll get into later on. So if you want to go through this, this is more stuff. This is what you want.
I'm just looking forward to seeing what the accomplishment is.
Do you want to read through that?
Yeah, if you could show me the accomplishment, that would help everyone.
Yeah, but again, you're judging Model G from a different standard from Model A. You're saying that Model A is metaphysical and Model G has to be brilliantly scientific. I'm saying that Model G...
Yeah, but if Model G is to be metaphysical as well, what is the metaphysical basis of Model G, which makes it also helpful?
Yeah, but it has all the stuff with the order rings and all of the other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, the forms of cognition are very metaphysical because they're based on dichotomies.
Yes.
There's a hell of a lot. I mean, his LII, there's a hell of a lot of metaphysics going on with Viktor. But it's how we're framing this, Jack. You're trying to, I'm just saying that there's all the TI stuff and then there's the experiments as well. I'm being honest by showing what experiments he's tried to do and the limitations of said experiments. So if you go through this...
Yeah, that's very admirable. But I'm trying to consider what is one. This experiment hasn't worked so well, fair enough. But also, why do this experiment? What is this experiment trying to demonstrate?
Well, he does many on them, but it's like I said, there's a whole process
Yes.
To get through. And in this, and the next slide will be about one that I hope that gets translated. I think I can send it to you. It's in a Google Translate at the moment. The translation is not very good, as I'll show you. But if you go through this, because again, it's Viktor's thoughts on scientific experimentation.
Yes. So this is something which has actually been tested?
Yes, the issue, Viktor knows the issue, because he does experiments all the while. But as you said, you know, you need they need to be reproduced by people who haven't got a vested interest.
Hang on, the way to start is to split the general group to extroverts and introverts, paired dialogues to visually verify reliability of the splitting, and then check separately the extroverts and separately the introverts for questivity and declarability.
Yeah, asking, declaring.
Asking to, so how okay, that's another Rayner dichotomy. Okay.
Yeah, I had to ask.
The last polarity, if you remember, I interpreted as the concentration dissipation of energy. We would take, for example, two extrovert rings of different pulsations, one radical, concentrating energy to the extent of explosion, the other moderate, dissipating energy, not allowing critical energy to release. Okay, so they're measuring energy. What is energy? What is this psychic energy? What does it look like?
I'll get into that later on.
Okay, but like we need that to understand this.
Oh, right then.
It's like you're putting the cart before the horse on all of this. This is why
right, okay. We're gonna go. Yeah. We'll do this bit then. Right. Yes. So we will go to here. Right then. So, but now we're doing it like this. We're gonna do all the energy stuff, please, and then go back to the other stuff, because this is a whole section.
Right.
Right then. So what have we got here? Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is the whole thing.
Okay.
And we're going to zoom in on certain bits because it goes a bit, it's not exactly brilliantly clear. But so here's a very important thing. I think this is bold and cautious in Model A, societal, personal. I used to call it externalities, internalities, but it makes it clearer to say societal and personal.
Right.
And Andre retranslated what I was working off originally. So this is an explanation of the externalities, internalities. And this is important because this is where you get the supervision ring.
So externalities quartet activated by external stimulation of a function in the launcher position. Okay.
Yes, you see, it's important. Even though you say, oh, it's on the right, it's not important.
No. You haven't demonstrated it's important. You just demonstrated that there is some reason they have. You haven't demonstrated it as being an important reason.
Yeah, but you're the one who says that it's important. That's one of your criticisms. You said, oh, it's important. It shouldn't be all the way on the right.
Well, I mean, that usually you'd want to arrange your model so that one, it's coherent, and two, it's also going to help people to understand other people, if it's a personality theory. The significance of this launcher, that it's meant to launch other columns. It's meant to launch a process of energy metabolism. Okay. How does that help people to understand the personality type?
But I could say such things about various things in Model A.
Okay.
That will play out later on because I've got a whole section on that. But again, you want about energy, right? Okay. So, yeah. And part of the context of energy is distance. And this is the other part of the arrangement of it, where and it's part of the benefit ring, in that, in terms of socially useful actions in society, and so then he's got the idea of the social mission,
right,
and social adaptation. But that's late. I'll have to do that later on because we're on the energy part of it, and then we've got the internet is the personal row. And so this is one of these things with I'll get into that later on. So what's this? Right, vertical blocking. But again, you wanted to know about information. No, you wanted to know about energy.
I want to know about everything and understand what the point of it all is.
Right. Well, it would be easy if we went in order, but you also say that you want to bring the audience. Here's some information. You can read through this. This is from a PDF in 2015. I didn't show this last time.
Okay. Along with a sequence of steps, energy supplementation is gradually reduced. The regulating block has maximum energy supply. The implementation has optimum. Result presentation has minimum. And the new data has pessimum energy supply. Okay, so you've got the maximum, minimum, pessimum, etc. Right. The behavior of any complex system has not just temporal, but also spatial dimension. Right. When you say spatial dimension,
it means distance, the societal versus personal thing.
Sorry,
the dimension of range.
Okay, this is the thing.
These are words.
These are words, and when I ask for explanations of his words, I get more words, but I still don't get any further clarity.
Okay, what do you want to explain?
Well, what is this spatial dimension, and why is it relevant to exploring psychic energy?
But I have to go through that again.
I feel as if I'm in a very. This still feels no more transparent to me than when we began.
Okay. I'll go out of sequence again. We'll go to energy. So we did this one before, and we did this one, and we've done that one. Now, here's some more on the... Oh, no, in it. We went through this before. We didn't go through the yellow things. Right. So, this bit's important. However, each of these actions, not to mention the implementation of the solution, requires energy costs. In addition, each form of mental activity, i.e. function, requires a certain level of activity, which means energy costs. This is the laws and dynamics of these processes that describes the type of energy metabolism. Okay,
so there are energy costs, but what is the energy? What is psychic energy?
Well, there are various. There's a few next slides to go over that.
Okay.
So,
is there
here we go.
Just one sentence explanation of what psychic energy is?
Well, it comes. This metric will explain things. It's the equivalent of blue colossus dimensions. Here we go. There should be a difference between information and energy metrics. For Model G, energy metric is more interesting, applicable, important. This metric is understood as the degree of freedom to perform a function that occupies a certain position. The minimum value of a metric is assigned to the energetic pessimum function. For example, the 8th function, which only has 1 degree of freedom, it is either on or off. It is always on, i.e. a person cannot stop. A person cannot stop controlling the environment around themselves. For example, administrator cannot stop monitoring and controlling the order in the environment, i.e. use function L. 7th L plus. 7th function has 2 extreme values, not showing up or showing up in force to its extreme. So that would be like polar and roll. Oh no, that would be polar. For example, mentor, that's EIE. Mentor most often pays attention to their outer look, i.e. function S, comfort sensor, but under certain circumstances may neglect their own looks. Functions with the most degrees of freedom, multimetric functions, indeed have the most degree of freedom. The maximum function, i.e. the first one, has the most degree of freedom, i.e. with at least 8 different ways of manifesting itself. If you have an SE function in your first position, you are able to both push and retreat, can perform solo or in a team, join the competition or wait it out. So functions in multimetric positions are able to express themselves in varied and stable fashion.
So already looking at that, I don't see how that is at all different from strong and weak.
There is a bit more to it. There is more to it. Right then, so this describes... Now, I've only done it like this so that it's easier to read. The actual form is like this, horizontal, folks. But I'll just put it together so that it's more readable. Now, so A lot of Model G is about the implementation of a function, and I make this point here in yellow, but I'll go through the maximum, and then you can see if you disagree with it. The maximum energy functions in this column are full of excess power and take the largest portion of energy from the psyche's energy potential. Dominant takes more than auxiliary. Demonstrative, that's Model A created, which is the strongest function at close range. These functions are responsible for the constant generation of a communication field around the person. The more powerful each function is, the more its field is felt, and its operation covers a greater area. Note, lower row is short range, so the communicative field of the function in position 5 is context dependent on its territory. Any questions about the maximum?
It sounds like leading and demonstrative.
Yes.
Play.
Yeah. You have the information for those, but you also have the energy to implement it, and it's when you.
Yeah, that's the same as strong and weak, strong and bold specifically. It's a function which is both strong and it's bold. We also call that four-dimensional. It has this. What is Model G adding here?
Okay, well, it will come out in the wash.
Okay, it's right. I hope the wash doesn't take too long.
Right. Well, it might. Optimum energy power. The optimum energy function in position 2 receives that exact amount of energy it needs to solve any given problem related to fulfill the social mission. So, because this is in the social mission block, you've got this kind of blocking that you're not exactly a fan of. So you would have, and again, it depends on the role being enacted.
So like the creative and the suggestive.
Yeah, but this blocks it in terms of a social role. So, for example, do you agree that Eilees assemblers are innovative people?
I think that is largely accepted.
Right, and so you're going to have blocking of TE, of NE with TE, and that TE is the servant of NE.
I think that TE is a servant of TI with NE. Because
it's a servant of both.
Because if you look at the process, it's not just TE serving NE. NE is the leader of it all, and NE has TI helping it out, and TE is feeding into TI in a very fluid interplay.
And this is why I call the type NETX. Now, Viktor, he goes even further. I mean, he initially would call it, in his letters, what would he call it? He would call it IP. You know, so that would translate as NET, and I thought that's a little bit far. So I call it NETX.
It doesn't easily call it IL. It still means the same thing.
Pardon?
It still means the same thing if you call it IL or IP. You're just referring to a different function. Each one of them are necessitated by the presence of the I.
Yeah, but the way I put it, it emphasizes the dual, like, as you say, as you pointed out there, because you brought up TI.
Yeah, I know. I brought up TI because TI actually blocks with NE, and it helps us.
Yeah, I know it does.
How extra nutrition is used.
Information-wise, it does, but then you've got this situation of certain activities. So imagine an ILE inventor.
Yeah, but you say the situational aspect. An ILE can be extroverted intuition and extroverted logic, which is what I'm probably doing more of now. But you could also have an ILE who's exercising their mobilizing function if any extroverted logic goes out the window.
Yes.
So what happens there? What about the ILE, a comedian, the Conan O'Brien ILE?
Well, I mean, I've got that. I mentioned that in previous slides when I talk about various roles. And what you mean? Comedian sort of doing the performer role there, going to his role function. I brought that up in previous slides.
No,
we skipped over that bit. We'll get back to that later.
There is nothing extroverted sensation oriented about how an ILE tries to cheer people up. There's nothing at all about extroverted sensation. It's not SEE performer like an MBTI ESFP. SEE isn't a performer MBTI ESFP. They're very different.
What about where you've got the SEE as politician, and politics is called show business for the less good looking?
No, that's an idiom, right? Two, that isn't the point. The whole idea of politics is navigating social relationships for power. That's got nothing to do with cheering people up and actually entertaining.
Yeah, but they have to perform though.
Well, there is some performing, but again, it's like it's a demonstrated extroverted ethics of SEE. It's got nothing to do with the extroverted sensation. So this idea of actually saying that an Eiley is playing some sort of extroverted sensation role and actually enjoying it, it's a role function. They don't actually do it for that reason. It's because they're forced to. Whereas they do derive satisfaction from cheering people up, from actually creating positive emotionality, because it's a valued information element. They're mobilized.
Are you saying that SEE are not good performers?
They can be, but that's not the point.
But yeah, there's the point though in the benefit ring is that it's role playing, it's not type playing.
Yeah, but when you're the role function, when the Eiley is using the role function, it's an unpleasant thing. And that's when they're having to be a bit more assertive to get things done. It's like me here. It's like me. I actually hate interrupting you, because I would, if I could, I'd let you speak forever, and so I can just carry on listening. I feel there's a need for me not to do that, and it's a bit uncomfortable for me. That's my extroverted sensation role. It's me interrupting, applying a little bit of force.
Well, you're also taking things out of sequence. So you want all the energy stuff. I'll give you the energy stuff. So now we're on optimum.
Okay.
Optimum energy function in position 2 receives the exact amount of energy it needs to solve any given problem related to fulfilling the social mission. Does that contradict anything about the demonstrative function in Model A?
Hang on, let me read through it.
I'll get bigger.
See, that amount of energy it needs to solve any given problem. Well, that's the problem. The suggestive function is not going to be good at solving the problem. Yes, this does fit a cautious function, a cautious and strong function, and it actually fits the ignoring function rather well. It's just that the ignoring function doesn't like to be used. The ignoring function is a perfect example of using the optimal amount of energy to actually solve a problem. Right. We use the tool.
Right, I'll just show the audience which functions we're talking about here. So in ENTP, it's TE and SI.
Yeah. So an ILE is not going to be using SI to solve any given problem.
Well, this is this thing that I mentioned before about the property of distance is very important.
Okay.
Right. So. Right. Oh dear. What was that? Minimum energy power.
Noise.
Okay. Minimum energy power. The minimum energy function applies to positions 3 and 7. So that is this column here.
Oh, so sorry, Ben, if you're going to tell me a little bit about spatial distance just there, because it became relevant to the conversation.
Oh, dear me. Right.
Sorry,
that's this thing. Right.
Okay.
And it's also, wait a minute. And it's also one of these things in the sequence where I talk about comparing later on launcher and suggestive, where I talk about all of the constraints on the suggestive function and how it's ranked and all of that. But that's like, it's best to go over that at the end after we've got through all of these ideas, because that's a nuanced thing. But again, societal and personal. And again, relations of social benefits, social order. So the societal row. Right. That's not right on this one. Minimum energy power. The minimum energy function applies to positions 3 and 7.
Sorry, Ben, because I'm really trying to understand this. I'm trying. And you're presenting me the optimum energy. And I pointed out that I didn't quite make sense for suggestive function to be optimum. You said, well, that's where spatial distance comes into it. Okay. Yeah. So how? Because what you just did,
so you want to go over that right now. You want to go, okay, we can go right to the end.
Under 30 seconds. If
right. We can go over that now. Where is that? Here. Where we're comparing the launcher and the suggestive.
Yeah. That's
in this section. Because we're actually talking about how it's constrained. Right. Launcher position has lower energy than suggestive. but has higher information. Launcher and control functions are the most sensitive and are always on. They gather information. This can be seen as consistent with launcher being a 2D function and suggestive being a 1D function in terms of information, although that is coming from Bukalov. They gather but don't metabolize the information as well as 3D and 4D functions do. The launcher function is chronologically first. Because you were saying in one of your criticisms that the mobilizing function was downplayed in importance. So, SI and how SI is, it's got these constraints on it in terms of its use. The suggestive function is constrained by the creative function via the vertical supervision ring. Its energy level is optimum when the auxiliary function is free from supervision by the lead function. It implements the auxiliary function. E.g., LII gets emotionally expressive when expressing ideas. It's important to remember that the launcher function is a longer ranged function than the suggestive function, because the launcher function is in the societal row and the suggestive function is in the personal row. And then something else that you've brought up about why SI was put where it was. There's another thing to consider. SI has a higher energy metric than these two valued functions, break FI and control NI. So they have to come after it. So NE and T are agreed upon as being stronger than FE in NETX. So it comes down to the energy component of 2D SE versus 2D FE in NETX. SE is the same EP mindset, so what, flexible active mindset as lead NE. Because launcher is always on, it has a lesser degree of freedom than the role function. The functions are arranged in social order ring, aka social benefit ring. And then there's the bit with the metric that we went over before. And then you said in the previous one, oh, we won't be able to tell the difference between mobilized and suggestive. How will we tell mirrors apart? And these are three ways.
So mirrors and suggestive can be differentiated by role versus point of least resistance. Well, that's not how you... So you pointed two different functions to tell apart these functions. Gulenko,
no, I'm just saying that's a way of telling apart LII and ILE.
Sorry, but no. The difficulty there is that they're not valued, and it's more difficult to tell them apart. So basically you're saying...
Well, I could see FI polar in ENTP easily.
Wait. So you're saying that, okay, you can't tell these apart. You look at these other functions.
No, I'm just saying if you're that's predicated on you saying, oh, if you go by that, you can't use you can't split apart mirrors in terms of mobilizing and suggestive, and that isn't even right anyway, because I've shown how strong launcher is.
The rationale for telling apart mirrors by using the mobilizing and suggestive is that they value information elements, and therefore they're more likely to try to actually develop them, and therefore they're more likely to reach their limits in terms of how far they can develop them. That's why I have an ILE and an LII. You know, both of them will be interested in FE and SI, but the ILE will have far more success with FE than the LII. But if you're doing role and vulnerable, they don't value these. So there isn't much reason for them to try to develop these. It entirely depends on the situation or what they're being forced to do. So that makes it far more conditional in terms of seeing an LII and an ILE differ in their use of extroverted sensation and their introverted ethics. That's why it's far more useful to use a mobilizing versus suggestive. So well, I don't think how this is helpful.
I personally can see it a lot easier. I can see break SE versus break FI a lot easier.
And given that you've tried to suggest that the use of SE by an ILE is being a performer, I find that hard to believe.
Why?
Because as we just demonstrated, extrovert sensation as being a function, an information element of forceful application, has nothing to do with being a performer.
There are different aspects to extroverted sensor. There's a freedom aspect to it. What I'm saying here...
An independence aspect, yes, I can see that. But that still has nothing to do with being a performer. What is performing? What does that mean?
I will go back to... Are many actors and actresses frequently SEE?
Sorry, are actresses frequently SEE? There are many actors STE, but also many EST actresses and many EIE actresses. You know, if you point to an area or a field that requires quite a bit of extroverted ethics, and you have lots of extroverted ethics, you want to do well, you would almost certainly find SCEs and IEEs there because it's a demonstrated function. That makes complete sense.
What about the ability to be in the moment and in the context?
Yeah, being in the moment, being in the context. I know extroverted sensation will help with that, but also ESE can do that perfectly well as well. But is the emphasis of performing being in the moment, or is the emphasis of performing having an effect on people watching you?
Ah, but you see, the best performance is you're not thinking about your performance. You're in the moment.
Well, that is quite a questionable statement. I'm not going to say it's absolutely wrong, but there are many of very great performers who plan out their performances.
Yeah, well, anyway, that is a whole issue. But I suggest people look at the book Directing Actors by Judith Weston. And yes, there are many various ways of skinning a cat when it comes to acting. I've heard that Gary Oldman is very much outside in rather than inside out, like Stanislavski. Yeah. Right then. Oh,
okay, the other ones, Gulenko mindset and left versus right spinner. Neither of them are, well, I'm not going to criticize them yet because I don't quite understand what they are. So what is one, okay, as temperament, okay, I get that's temperament, fair enough. And then left versus right spinner. What is left versus right spinner?
What's process and result?
So you're suggesting that it is easier to see process, result, and temperament and role versus vulnerable, rather than just looking at the mobilizing and the suggestive.
No, I'm just saying that if that's predicated on you being right about the launcher and the suggestive, but you're not right on that though.
I mean, you can easily point to examples.
This is a conditional counter. This one here, right? So it's not actually necessary.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I mean, you haven't convinced me that these are better ways, but they are. Okay, I guess you can find other ways of telling part mirrors than the mobilizing and suggestive. But I think if you've deprived yourself of your best tool for it, then fair enough. Unless you're saying no, there are better tools than that. Fair enough.
Well, no, I'm just saying even if, because you said you were looking at Model G and you gave a viewpoint. You characterized it like this.
Yeah.
You looked at it like this, and you said in one of your criticisms, it looks like FE is less important than SI because it's all the way there on the right.
Well, it's pessimism energy.
Right. But then I've given you these other conditions that show how it is stronger than SI.
So when introverted sensation is suddenly opened up by a certain situation, by, say, the presentation of ideas for an LII, for instance, they can become more animated. So does that mean that an ILE doesn't become animated and isn't more consistently animated across various situations?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. So why is...
That's the property of distance.
Okay.
This is why I said to do this at the end, because all of these nuances come together to explain... But
it seems so nuanced, but it seems impractical. If you're saying that you've got to wait, so okay, look, this is not useful until this particular situation. You've got to wait this particular situation when an LI in just the right circumstances may show extroverted ethics, which is comparable to that of an ILE. That is why it should be put ahead of the extroverted ethics, of where an ILE is put. I don't see the reasoning. It seems to me that unless you can show, first of all, you have to show one that the use of extroverted ethics by an LII in this very particular situation is significantly greater than the use of extroverted ethics by an ILE in all the other situations. Then you also have to show why this particular situation is likely to occur and is actually quite important in some way. It can actually help people better if you wait around for the situation to happen.
But this is just so you are comparing mobilizing FE in ILE to the situation where LII is at close range with somebody,
okay,
and the FE comes into play.
okay.
Now,
Yeah.
I have that graphic, I believe, up here, and we went through this in the first. Is that it? That might be it. Yes, here we go. Reserves, does not like small talk and is irritated by uninvited guests. Can't make him feel at ease. So in that case, not on your territory.
But
Number two.
Fear.
Number two is conditional. Can only keep a lively conversation if the topic is of personal concern to it.
Okay. So again, limitations, fair enough. I know the limitations. Although unfriendly and abrupt with outsiders, for his loved ones, he can create relaxed and festive atmosphere. If necessary, can find an interesting aspect of a situation, find a way to arouse another person's interest in the topic. Well, that's demonstrably untrue. LIEs frequently struggle with making other people aroused in their interest in the topic.
This is LII.
And to say that an ILE is not going to be able to do that.
But this is for LII.
Oh, it's for LII. Yeah, I know that's for LII. So why are you suggesting an LII, if necessary, can find an interesting aspect of the situation, find a way to arouse another person's interest in the topic? It is a frequent criticism of LIIs, but they can't do this. That's why they need ESEs.
It depends on the topic.
Could you give me one example of an LII, who we both agree is an LII, who can find a way to arouse another person's interest in the topic?
Me.
Ben, it's very difficult to say that you are good at arousing people's interest in a topic.
Well, wait. How did you introduce me at the beginning of the video?
You're one of the most well-known proliferators of Model G, but there aren't any other proliferators that are speaking English.
And I was about to say that myself. It's not exactly a big pond I'm in.
I say you make it incredibly difficult to be interested in Model G. You don't make it,
especially when we do things out of order.
No, if I was trying to follow the order for how long? At least several minutes, and each time it was like.
Yeah, but you said, "Oh, we got to go to this, and then we got to go to that." So you kept changing the order.
Okay, so there's a bit. So, are you of the opinion that you are very good at, or can find a way to get people very interested and having the interest aroused in the topics you talk about?
This is the aspect of conditioning. It has to be a particular thing. It's not like on the zero type of the intellectual level, the way ILE is.
No, fine. So in a particular thing. So I imagine Model G would be your particular thing. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
And econ as well, I suppose.
Okay. So you're saying that you are especially good at getting people interested in Model G.
No, it's for LII, it's a case of if you see them meet somebody with a common interest, then they become expressive in that situation. Okay, David Mark Kersey called it going flaky.
But wait, Ben, that's when someone already has an interest rather than arousing an interest.
Yes, but the whole point of this is that this is conditional. This block dominates at close range territory. The person has to be on their territory to display these things. That is why it says things like, can only keep a lively conversation if the topic is personal concern to it.
Yeah, no, I know we've established that. So you're talking about Model G. That is a personal concern to you. Makes complete sense. Nevertheless, I wouldn't say that people, at least looking at the chat in this audience, I wouldn't say that you're doing a very good job of arousing their interest in Model G.
Well, usually I'm not doing it all in one go like this with lots of new information with somebody who wants me to keep changing the order.
Yeah, fair enough, but we compare that to me, right? I've managed to get it's a good 7 to 8 people interested in Model A just today, and it was not hard for me. But I was talking about something of personal concern to me, which is Model A. It's in the same situation. I'm far better at arousing people's interest in the subject. And why? Because my extroverted ethics is better than yours. Because it's my mobilizing function.
Well, yes, that is consistent with Model G. I've said about the societal versus the personal. I'm only really any good at close distance.
Right.
I have to be in my wheelhouse. I have to be on my territory.
Okay, no, that's
fine. You don't.
Fine. But are you saying then that I could also, then I couldn't do it at a close personal distance?
No, but I think what would happen there is there's a close. You then start hitting the brake function with ILE at close distance.
What does that mean?
Okay, I would have to go to that profile.
Oh, I see. So you reach introverted ethics.
Yes, because those things come up more, don't they, at close range?
They can if you know someone very much better.
Right.
So yes, if you know someone very well and you have a relationship, that can be a difficulty. Fair enough, but that's got nothing to do with arousing people's interest. That's about whether they can, rely and depend on you as a close friend.
Well, if I was writing the profile, I wouldn't make it look like that suddenly that when the LII is on their territory, they become Mr. Wonderful. Maybe one of those bullet points was a little bit too far.
But there's another problem. There's another problem here, Ben. You've now chosen an issue, which is introverted ethics as a brake function. That's very specific to an ILE and an SLE. But you're suggesting, but these columns don't change. That is the personal sphere, isn't it? So that's the personal sphere. Then take, say, I don't know, an SEE. Is an SEE going to be unable to use their introverted intuition in a close personal sphere because of their brake function? Given that their brake function, which is introverted logic, has nothing to do with being close and personal.
Well, I would have to look at the...
See, it only applies to an ILE and SLE. That argument could only apply. But you're trying to show this as a universal thing across all types. It's that scaling problem we're talking about, by the way.
Okay, let's drill down on this. If you go through that again, I'll try and...
Okay. So let's swap around. Let's get an SEE rather than an ILE.
Right.
So SEE, right, as imagine the same rule for the function, their manipulative function, right?
Yeah, I'll just look for the profile. Go on.
Yeah. So the same rule is that only in certain conditions in the close personal sphere will suddenly their suggestive function spark into life and be actually far better than, say, I don't know, an ESI using this particular area. Now, that would be their introverted intuition. Now, you would also say, but their brake is going to get in the way. Okay, but what's their brake? It's not introverted ethics this time, it's introverted logic. And the entire basis of saying that the brake was going to get in the way for the ILE is because in the close and personal sphere. But the introverted logic does not apply like this in the close personal sphere. It's very much impersonal. So how does that square?
Which type did you say you wanted to look at? Did you say you wanted to look at
SEE? We can look at any type other than ILE and SLE, and I'll be able to demonstrate my point here.
Yeah, but you brought up extroverted feeling, and
well, just because
you brought up the fact that
that's shouldn't you were giving,
because we were talking about extroverted feeling, and you were talking about shouldn't ILE be good at close range with their FE, and then I said, well, at closer range, more FI things will come up, and I need to show
that's fair.
That profile, and it's not necessarily going to be universal for all of the functions necessarily. I will look for it.
The only way it can't is if these spheres, like social, intellectual, if they shift around depending on the type. Do they shift around this table, or do they not?
Wait a minute, I was just moving some slides then. Please say that again.
Do the spheres, such as personal, social, do they shift around the table depending on where, say, introverted ethics is? or do they stay put? For every single type, they're in the same places on that table: social, intellectual sphere, and other spheres.
I think so, but there's different levels.
Yeah, no, but I just want to yes, no. Do they stay put? Do you still see that title above on your table saying that's the social sphere, or does it move?
Wait a minute, say that again.
So if you go on that table, and that table, I imagine it says which ones are the social sphere, which ones are the intellectual sphere.
Right. So this one.
Yeah. Let's see. Where does it say social sphere?
Right. The top one, societal row.
Societal row. Right. So does that move around depending on the type, or does that stay put?
That stays put.
That stays put. Therefore, we cannot say that something which is specific to the social sphere and introverted ethics is going to apply for every single type, because the social sphere is going to remain, but the information elements are going to be different.
Yeah, but
no longer the break function that's a problem.
Yeah, but I brought it up in the specific example where you talked about F in close range, because FI is very much associated with that. It's specific to it, and so some of these things might come up in that.
Yes, in which case, let's look at a different example. Let's say how does it work for an SCE? Why is an SCE not able? So sorry, why is an SCE able to use their introverted intuition, right?
Yeah.
In these particular close personal situations, better than an ESI?
Right. Wait a minute. I'll go back there. That's not right. That's right. So please say that again about.
Right. So let's say we're comparing ESI and SCE together, right?
Yep.
So we're going to say something like the ESI, the SCE can use introverted intuition in very specific situations.
Yes.
And better than that of an ESI.
I never said that.
Well, that's what you're implying about an LII using extroverted ethics in certain situations better than an ILE. Doesn't that scale?
Well,
what's the point of the function if it doesn't?
They're going to be used in different ways, but all functions are used in different ways. In general,
right?
Because remember I showed the thing about that all of the functions in the societal row, the bold functions, have greater scope of use than the cautious ones, the ones in the personal row. And so, yes, FE, there will be, we could arguably say, greater FE competency in ILE than LII. But when the rubber meets the road, FI break can short circuit FE things in terms of the actual behavior.
Okay, I accept that, yes.
Whereas, and so on a closer distance, you have LII with their conditional use of FE that you might say, okay, it's as good or maybe not quite as good as ILE. But in that close relationship, and you've got ILE at a close distance as well, but at that close distance, the break function is likely to be more of a problem because certain things of personal ethics are going to come up.
Yeah,
at that distance.
Yes, so ILE uses more extroverted ethics, but extroverted ethics can also backfire, right? But the point is the LII doesn't even start using extroverted ethics well.
Yeah, they don't. They generally, I mean, in terms of long distance communications and sort of acquaintances, ILE definitely uses FE better than LII.
Yes.
The difference is the different kinds of relationship and how close they are.
So basically, so there's a difference between someone who's running and tripping and falling over, and someone who's very carefully taking maybe a first step. Now, how is that first step going to be seen as being stronger or more influential in the type when the person takes the run and falls over and hits their face?
Well, I haven't framed it like that. You're the one that keeps framing the suggestive as that I'm saying the suggestive is stronger than the mobilizer.
But we're trying to suggest that this is somehow, this manipulative function or suggestive function is somehow worthy of an optimum energy level.
It was just.
I agree that mobilizer functioning is not worthy of an optimum energy level. It overplays it. But I don't see how a suggestive function is using just the right energy to solve.
So, does a type want what is associated with their suggestive function more than what they want associated with their mobilizing function? Do they want their suggestive function more?
Yes, they need it.
Right. So in that sense, there's energy for it to be satisfied.
No, they're frequently dissatisfied.
Yeah, but it's there in the model, though, like conditionality in these specific situations where it gets satisfied.
That doesn't follow.
Why?
How is it satisfied for an LII to maybe in one particular example in the close relationship, but something they're interested in, they may get someone interested in their idea, although they don't tend to be as good at it as an ILE. And given that, this is an interesting point, Ben. Think about it this way. They do need it more, right? But that means there's also a greater need for it to be provided for it to be satisfied. So there's a greater gap between what they want and what they're going to get. Whereas when it comes to extroverted ethics for an ILE, there's far lesser of a gap. That's why they don't blend with a leading. That's why mobilizing doesn't need leading from the other person. It just needs a creative. It needs a little bit.
One of the tricky things is you compare the energy level of something in the societal row versus the energy level of something in the personal row. And in the societal row, there's a lot more scope of use and general competency amongst all of those. Well, not all of them, but greater scope of use amongst those functions. They get more practice.
So when you say societal row, do you mean that's when the person is out there talking? Like, are we doing societal now to all the people watching us?
Yes, I sort of. I don't know. I might get on. I mean, maybe in other events, I'm more on my territory because this is slightly adversarial. But
well, no, I wouldn't say it's. I'm trying to understand, and I'm trying to get the information from you, which will help me and other people to understand. I'm not out to completely rip apart your model, although I may.
It's not my model; it's Viktor's.
Viktor's model, fair enough. But you're telling, and same with Model A isn't my model, fair. But I actually sincerely believe that if you are able to give me a clear explanation that makes sense and answers my questions in the way that actually convinces me actually you've got a good point, I sincerely believe I would change my mind to support Model G. But I have no sight of this happening because it's hard for me to get an understanding of what you're saying in a clear way.
What do you want to know? Precisely.
Okay. So what I would like to know precisely is what are the benefits to someone who is just, let's say you're presented with Socionics, right? And you're Socionics general. Why choose Model G over Model A?
Okay, so I believe that Model A gives you an emphasis on ego, super id, and id. And I believe that if you break it into 4 blocks of social mission, social adaptation, self-affirmation, and inflation avoidance, that is more useful to somebody than those. I've asked you yourself, what do you think of that split between mental and vital? I mean, do you believe that the vital ring is unconscious?
No, I don't. I use a different definition, which is that one's public and private, but one's to do with our, well, we say bringing social, yes, our interactions with the outside world, and the other 2 blocks are what we more use for our own needs. And we could look into that. For instance, ego block, the area of confidence and strength, what we bring to the outside world. But then superego, what is weak and not valued, but still public, it's where we are failing in the outside world and what the outside world expects of us, but we don't want to do it. It wouldn't be there if it weren't for the outside world. Then if you look at the suggestive function, the mobilizing function in super id, it makes sense to be more private. These are our needs and aspirations, not for other people. It's for ourselves and our own growth. And then if you look at ignoring and demonstrating, then the id block. This is something which is strong, but we don't like to show it off because we don't value it. So we keep it privately and you use it as needed to help our own purposes. Straightforward to me.
Right. I personally think that it's more useful to me in making sense and seeing the complementarity between roles, which I went through. Well, if you put me slides back on screen, please.
Oh, so did I take it off?
No. What I did is I took it off when I went to close something.
Okay, I thought maybe I was being adversarial because
right, it's it.
Your slide.
Yeah, you want to see that? We don't even see the experiments yet. So now we can go back to the experiments about the roles.
Right.
Right then. So I told you there was method in my madness with the sequence. Now, did we go through all of these?
I still haven't seen the method, but okay.
Right.
Another version of test exercise of energy rings of different pulsations.
Yeah.
And another thing, what is pulsations?
Where is it?
There are so many words upon words upon words upon words.
Well, this is one of these Google Translates.
Where do we get the context?
Things. Well, it's going about the direction left versus right. Anyway, so this one.
I'm not blaming you for this. They've just written it in a very obscure way. I know this.
Well, I mean, it's because of the Google Translate. This is an example of what happens with a Google Translate.
Vertique. French?
Yeah. It should be vertness factor, but you get torsion factor.
Vertness.
I'm going to ask Andre to translate this. So this is the paper that Viktor sent me.
Ooh. Okay. Sorry.
This is the paper that Viktor sent me, and we can go through this. Maybe we can do a separate debate, because this is what we're going to have to do. Is we're going to have to break it down into piecemeal things, because it's just too much for people to assimilate. No matter how good. Well,
but it just suggests to me that one cannot simply explain, and one cannot possibly simply explain why Model G has certain benefits which Model A can't provide, and are a reason for why one should choose Model G on balance over Model A.
Well, I think it's you see, you would say, and when it does have a benefit, you will say, oh, it's included in Model A anyway, but it tends to be something which is sort of hidden away. Whereas what is front and center in Model G is the idea of societal and personal and social mission and social adaptation.
Well, given that we have mental and vital, which is a pretty big split, and that already deals with the public and private, that's pretty front and center, I'd say. It's the top two versus the bottom two.
So,
is that one is laid out horizontally, and Model A is laid out vertically. They are equally front and center on this point, Ben.
Right. So this will be. So you wanted to see the paper by Schechter and Kobrinskaya.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Right. 1988.
Okay. I thought it was 2019. Okay, 1988. Okay. Study small groups give us the key to further practical implementation of socionics. Results of experiments already show the rich potential small groups. Okay, surely typology of small groups can find practical application in medicine. Okay, so this is more the rationale, but let's get into the methodology. Can we go to the methodology? Thank you very much. Is that methodology? The psychological climate of a group is determined, first of all, by a level of mutual understanding and friendly attitude of the people. That's not methodology. In the work of Rainer,
I didn't write it, so I can only go with what I've got.
This is still literature review. It's not methodology.
Well, I know that. But
I know you know that. You got a degree in applied biology, but therefore you appreciate, as I do, that it's the methodology that's important here.
Well, and maybe we could do an event in the future where you try and show me some methodology for some Model A experiments.
I'm not claiming that there's any sort of empirical backing for Model A. I'm simply saying that there is a very clear deduction based on axioms, and that the reason why people should choose Model A over certain other models is because those axioms are very hard to question. They work out themselves very coherently and concisely, and as a model used non-predictively, it's very helpful for understanding the psyche.
Why would you say non-predictively?
I would say non-predictive because it's not a science. You shouldn't use socionics predictively. It's irresponsible at the moment. You should use it post hoc to understand what's gone on. If you want to use it predictively, that's when we really should start using experiments.
It seems that that you can use it predictively with certain people. It's like, because okay, this is the pattern of the individual, and they have an idea of how they're going to act next.
Well, we haven't done experiments to show that, and it could be a bit of fun, but it isn't something you should base a serious decision on. Not if you're advising professionally. You can use it to explain situations, but you shouldn't use it to predict what someone will do next and put money on it, or put your
not put money, but in saying interpersonal interactions, you can have an idea of what somebody is going to do, what their general tendencies are, based on their on your understanding of their psychology.
Yeah, you could, well, on the basis that from observation of their traits, they're likely to portray those traits later. That is something which is reasonably verified in psychology in general, and it would only support socionics insofar as it supports other areas of psychology.
In fact, that's what I would use to in making a case for typology. Is I would say, hang on a minute, these models have predictive power. Is that if you find somebody who really resembles the type, then you can make predictions about it, and you've noticed that you can predict things in people. If you see somebody who really matches a sociotype, you can make predictions. It's not scientific, but that's like the power of it, the useful of it to you is that you can help it in both understanding people and predicting their tendencies.
There is anecdotal value. There is anecdotal value. That doesn't mean it is.
Oh, have you frozen? It's not me, is it?
Have I gone? Oh no, I'm back.
No, you came back.
I came back. Sorry, but yes, you can use it anecdotally, and often it can be right. It's just like with visual identification, right? You can spot certain things, and you may use it anecdotally, and it may work, but you shouldn't rely on it.
No,
there's no empirical evidence to support.
Right. So you know what's included in visual identification?
Well, the examination of physical appearance, and also for some movement.
So that's the difference. The difference in body language. I mean, there's going to be a difference in body language between EII and SLE. Yeah, there'll be trends.
We know there are probably some kinds of patterns. We don't know if there are rules. In fact, they're probably not set rules, and we don't know how reliable they are. And we don't know how to clarify them exactly to the point where they're able to communicate them to everyone else and make sure that they can see the same things that we're seeing. At the end of the day, it boils down to certain anecdotes which people have. They can rely on as a clue, but not be the be-all and end-all. And they really should still be looking at the psychology of the person, which is why when people start throwing away the actual psychology and just looking at the face, they end up going horribly wrong in their typing.
Oh yeah, I don't like that as well. The anthropometrics, the Victorians tried to do the same thing. It's like find the criminal characteristics of people's skulls.
And I'm just catching myself right now because I know what's happening now. We are going off on a very interesting tangent.
Well, we are, but actually we're not, because we're back on this.
Okay.
So, like I said, I am presenting you with the evidence such that it is. I will try to get that other paper translated, and maybe you can try and give a nudge to the Model A people and say, hey, do some experiments.
Then goodness, But this isn't evidence. This is a literature review. You know this isn't evidence. You got a degree in applied biology.
I know, but I can only show you. I can only show you what I have. You cannot show me experiments in Model A.
No,
I'm showing you something which is imperfect.
But entirely, it depends on what the tool for should suit the purpose, right? Very Aristotelian that, but the tool should suit the purpose. So what's the purpose of trying to use an empirical study? The purpose was to show that there is something to the psychic energy of a benefit cycle over any other collection.
But
it's to getting a benefit cycle together rather than say all members of a quadra.
But this is based on relations of social benefit, which is already part of classical socionics. You still want to judge Model A, that gets to be judged by some a priori method, and yet Model G, oh no, we have to be judged by a scientific method, even though a lot of Model G is built on the same kind of axioms as Model A, but you want to judge us by a different standard.
No, it's not built on the same axioms. You're using things like process and result. That's far further down in the sequence of logical deduction. If you want to be like Model A, then you'll have your information dichotomies and your function dichotomies, which are pretty straightforward. You know function dichotomies, say strong, weak, mental, vital, inert, contact, bold, cautious, evaluatory, situational. When you put them all together, it gives a very good explanation of how different.
Right. Okay. I have a graphic on that actually that I do. Andrew did it a few years ago.
Yeah.
Here it is. Andrew Joynton did it.
Ah, wonderful. I wonder if Andrew's still watching. Well, maybe not. Let's take a look. Okay, so we've got the pyramid and we've got the function dichotomies. Oh, he's done energy model as well. Okay. Hang on, I find it really difficult to see on here.
I can zoom in if is there a particular area.
Zoom in on just the orange one, and that could be very helpful.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, public, private, and is that in the same position as mental, vital?
It's bold, cautious.
Interesting, but instead they've but the numbers aren't the same though, so it doesn't matter. No, it's fine. Doesn't even say. Look, see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then Model G is 1, 2, 3, 4 again. But what are those 1, 2, 3, 4 referring to? Probably they're talking about as externality. Externality in Model G, isn't it?
Yeah, but again, public, societal, private, personal.
Right. So there's a disagreement there on what is public and what is private.
But if we look at the functions, so it's still going to be, so if you look at the ILE, it's still going to be NE, SE, FE, TE. It's still the same functions.
Okay. I'm just trying to get both models in my head at the same time. Okay, let's go with ILE again, right? So mental, vital, right? You can see there'll be extroverted intuition, introverted logic, extroverted sensation, introverted ethics in that mental area, right? Now, if you go to energy model, right, they're using the term public-private, that's going to be extroverted intuition, then it's going to be introverted logic, then it's going to be extroverted sensation, then it's going to be...
Not in the public, they're all going to be extroverted. They're all the same vertness in the public because it's the same. Okay. Hang on.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be saying that the top row, right? That's going to be extroverted intuition. It's going to be extroverted logic.
Yes.
It's going to be extroverted sensation and extroverted ethics.
Yes.
So it basically matches up to bold, cautious, public, and private.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Now, if we go to automatic informed things. We need to know what these things actually mean. What does say public and private mean in Model G terms?
It's pretty much the same thing, but they're slightly different. There's a separate article on that, so I could ask for that to be translated as well.
Okay, so if it means the same thing, then the contradictions are this: that extroverted ethics and extroverted logic are seen as public rather than private, and also that introverted logic and introverted ethics are private rather than public. That's where there are contradictions there. So we need to look at what is the rationale for, say, extroverted ethics, which is meant to be an aspirational function. Was the rationale for that being public rather than private?
It's the rationale is that he's organized the societal row around the ring of social benefit, and that it's public in the sense of performing a role that is socially useful. And Ausra wrote that relations of social benefit are the ones that are most important for the social progress.
Right. Okay, so they're most important for social progress, but of course, if you flip around for an introvert, there'll be introverted ones and most important for social progress.
Yeah, so, the introverted functions will be in the societal row, yes.
So basically like bold, cautious in modern day. Those are the ones that are most important for social progress. Well, that doesn't really follow the rationale for why these things are used. I mean, if something's aspirational, then that means it's for you. I guess, well, what does private mean then? If the public ones are for social progress, what do the private ones mean?
Well, it's on its own personal territory, hence the name personal or internalities.
Okay, on personal territory. So used on the one-to-one.
That's what, remember when we had that?
So one-to-one versus a big group display.
Yeah, that's when, remember when we were going over the FE and LII and having that argument about what the difference is between ILE's use of FE and LII's use of FE. That distance, bold, cautious, comes into it.
Okay.
You're more bold with your FE than me.
Yeah, that's fair. But also I'm more bold in my extroverted logic than you are. I'm more bold in my no, that makes sense. It's not very good for using mirrors for that. It's more I'm more bold in my use of extroverted ethics than say an SCI. That'd be interesting. But okay, fine. So basically they've said that is what's public and private. It's a different meaning. That's more about what's given out, energy, like you could say, which Model A is also looking at, rather than what role you see it playing, whether it's for yourself or it's for others.
Yeah,
There's a difference there.
There are differences between the schools.
Because an ILE, yes, happens to use more extroverted ethics, and bold, cautious explains that. It's an aspirational thing. It's about the person is viewing it in terms of how they are developing. So that is there are different rationale there. So really, public-private is basically the same as bold, cautious, and it's just given a different name for a slightly different reason, connecting up to social progress, but essentially they do the same thing. So let's move to another one. So let's look at master slave. Okay. So master slave, extroverted intuition, extroverted logic, introverted logic, and hang on, that's the control function, isn't it? So master slave is basically like strong weak.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do they call it master slave?
Well, they probably think that the slave functions serve the master ones.
The slave functions serve the master ones. Okay. One thing I would comment, Ben, is that in terms of showing things in the sort of in a very useful way, one reason why I find Model G confusing is that, as you see, the way these are shaded, everything Model A is symmetrical, whereas in Model G, only some of them are symmetrical. It's probably when I look at it, I find it very jarring.
Well, it is going. I mean, there's, because it's going across the things that are in model A over there, whereas say if you were to look at, say, if you were to put things like this, social mission, then you would have to put 1 and 8 separate. And so if you did it the other way around, then that would be a bit more disjointed. But it's because these things are coming from model A, then yes, it would appear more disjointed. Because
but are these function dichotomies useful then in model G, or are they not? Are they important in model G, or are they not?
Well, this is like in the original model A. Certain ones I like to use more than others.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I bang on about public and private a lot. So.
Okay, but there's another important point, is that you're saying that no, it's not just that it's based on this empirical experiment, but for the showman of benefit cycles. Actually, you can look at it from a logical deduction point of view.
Yes, that's
right. Good. Good. In which case, surely it would make sense that you treat the functions in the way where they come about from their function dichotomies. If that is so, it would make sense to order them in a symmetrical way, rather than quite arbitrarily plonk the manipulative function up near the management, the demonstrative, and the creative. And as you can see, it looks out of place in the function dichotomies. What is the reason for it being there if not for the function dichotomies? And if it is for the function dichotomies, it wouldn't be there.
Right. Will be this is that bit where the crux of the matter with and what you brought up in the first one is it's the placement of the mobilizing and suggestive again.
Yes, primarily suggestive and manipulative.
Right.
No, right, it's both. It is both. And you can see, if you look at the white in the center, accelerate, decelerate. That isn't symmetrical. And so because it's not symmetrical, I cannot see the rationale for why it's not symmetrical. Because there's no function dichotomy there telling me why it should be there.
Well, what you have is the arrangement of model G. It has these function dichotomies, as you can see, but it's sort of like they are displaced by the arrangement in a benefit ring, because it focuses on horizontally on the benefit ring and vertically on the supervision ring.
Right, exactly. So the reason why it's okay to compromise on the function dichotomies and what they are necessitating in the model, the reason why you can compromise that because of this other thing, which is the benefit cycle, and the reason for that being important is due to an experiment which we cannot.
Oh no! It's not just that. It's based on a whole lot of experience with seeing groups of people.
Yes. Okay, experiencing groups of people. But as Viktor Gulenko has himself said, it's nearly impossible to get these groups of people together, as we looked at the beginning of our discussion.
Well, yeah, I mean, in former expert, but again, you are judging model A by metaphysics, and judging model G by against science.
We just tried to judge it based on metaphysics. We just did it right now, and it's failed.
How has it failed?
Because as you can see, the placement of the different information elements, different functions, sorry, different functions in model G are not adhering to what can be deduced from the function dichotomies. It's broken with that, as can clearly be seen with the suggestive and the mobilizing, or in the language model G, the manipulative and the launcher.
So you believe it's broken just because of the...
It's broken.
It's shown graphically.
Yeah, it's been broken for the purpose of benefit cycles. And you could say, okay, maybe there is an empirically based reason for making that break. But we don't have it because the methodology is not there. And then you say, oh, there's an anecdotal reason. But as Viktor Gulenko already says, there isn't an anecdotal reason because you do not, it was impossible to get enough experience of this anecdote. It doesn't happen very often. Gulenko said that. You showed it to me. So what is the basis? What is the set of standards which we can apply consistently to both Model A and Model G, where Model G comes out on top?
Well, that is a very good question. But I like the arrangement in the benefit rings. The people who prefer the information approach, the pure information approach, will prefer Model A. But at least now you admit that the information metabolism is a part of Model G.
Sorry. Did you just say that people who like a mixture of what's useful and what's logically coherent would prefer Model G? I think if you fail on both fronts, you don't win on either.
I didn't frame it like that.
So sorry. Could you just repeat what you said?
I said people who purely like the information approach would like Model A, which is primarily arranged as an information model that has not been tested over 40 years. No, it's not been proven in an experiment. Versus Model G, which incorporates information, but is primarily arranged in an energy ring. And Viktor Gulenko is making efforts at experiments. And because they're not perfect, and because he's not got the funding to do them brilliantly the way you would like, then you're going to rubbish it.
It's not even the way I'd like. I just want to see the methodology. It's not about perfection. Ben, you have a degree in applied biology. Therefore, you, like me, should appreciate that if we can't get a methodology, then there is no value, let alone lacking perfection.
Right. What we're going to have to do, if you would like, is to go through each experiment or any paper which is done and then discuss
any methodology for this
in detail.
Well,
there's not much in that, because if you let me show you it, I'll let you know how they did it.
I'd appreciate that.
It's not brilliant. Okay. I was disappointed. So have you seen this about homogeneous and heterogeneous groups?
Okay, in which all elements are in the same intertype situation. Okay. Okay, groups in which there are also 3 types of relations, but one pair of types in a symmetrical relation is in a better position. Okay, right. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so heterogeneous is not a pure benefit cycle, whereas homogeneous is.
Right. So
they had a control then. They had a control. Right. That's promising.
But well,
let's see.
It's not brilliant. They just had them in conversations.
So groups together form a class integral small groups. So, but what's the structure unit of Socion? An all form for quadrant led by complement. This person said this is explanation. This isn't the methodology again. Where's the methodology?
That's not my fault.
They are not assigned any specific task, just communication about 20-30 minutes. Okay, that bit. Sorry, I should have looked at what you highlighted. Right. So they had a 25-minute communication, and what did they observe?
Well, then you get all these results.
Okay, and quadra. So they did quadra. Due to activation relationships, some stress arises. Thanks to this, all members are constantly involved, including general information and energy flow. So the stress is a good thing. Okay. So, right. Okay. And now we've got bouquet.
No.
Superego, business and family. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So all of the same temperament, you could say.
Yeah.
There's lack of energy. Yep, unsurprising. Okay. And next, group ordering. Good for work. So let's see, NETE. Okay. So that's right. Oh, okay, this is meant to be benefit then. Yeah, social benefit.
Yeah.
Right. There's an excess of energy compared to other groups. Not exhausting, comfortable enough, but there's no sense of security, as in Quadra. Doesn't last more than 20 to 30 minutes, and certainly it is a plus due to... Okay, so now this makes me wondering. So it's not very stable, it's not very pleasant to be in it. Why is everything... why is the entire break away from the function dichotomies based on something which isn't useful compared to...
Isn't useful? So why did Ausra write about these relationships being very useful for the progress of society?
One could be useful conceptually for the progress of society. It doesn't mean if you get 4 of those types together, they're actually going to have a better experience. And even then, when we talk about the progress of society, what is one talking about? That is the taking away of basic information metabolism and putting that onto certain types. So we can go into this idea of, say, extroverted intuition being potential energy and extroverted sensation being kinetic energy. And how do you get from potential to kinetic? You have extroverted ethics creating the motivation, creating the enthusiasm to lead to action. And then that action leads to certain concrete properties changing, certain resources, as it were, and certain processes, which can enable new ideas to develop. It's the idea of information metabolism being a sort of cyclical effect, sort of theoretically work backwards. Fair enough. But the idea you get from that is the idea of social progress. And then, okay, one needs to clarify exactly what social progress is. Why is it useful? Why is it better than any other arrangement? And it seems to me like some sort of thing, because it's called the social progress thing, it's granted some sort of pseudo importance.
Well, they think that it's at a sort of a distance where the functions in the let's call them the cautious functions are not going to be as shown in order to conflict with other people. So say you've got a situation with a superego pair. If you have a superego pair, the closer they are, the more the cautious functions are going to sort of hit on each other. But in certain relationships where they're further apart, those cautious functions won't. So it's like the idea being that, well, at the level of a certain kind of distance where there's a utility in terms of what they're good at, the social roles they play. And again, I had all this in these graphics. I had it all prepared.
No.
All in a sequence.
I don't think the graphics can help that, Ben. You're saying that the vulnerable function, say, as a cautious function, only becomes apparent in clashes at a very close level.
Well, it's more when it's beyond the task, I would think.
What do you mean by beyond the task?
Well, the task where the task requires the cautious, the bold functions more than the cautious functions, and so people stay in a mode of social mission or social adaptation. So, for example, when say ILE was in a mode of theoretically, when they're in the mode of extroverted intuition with extroverted thinking, then that has primacy, and the introverted logic doesn't. If they continue to interact, Viktor thinks if they stop and reflect, then the introverted logic is coming in. So I have this for the other group. Now this is the revision ring.
Sorry. So you take an ILE, but the introverted logic only comes in when they stop and think. Is that I think that is a too drastic way of putting it. It's not quite like that. It's in a separate graphic. Okay, because it takes me back to the blocking problem, that Gulenko's had to completely run roughshod over the idea of blocking, the idea that these information elements come together to form meaningful molecules of information.
But it is there in the blocking though, because you've got any on top of Ti.
That is
or
true.
Ile.
Okay, that is true. Fair enough. But what about the blocking of the role in vulnerable? That's important blocking. It's the blocking of failure. The whole idea that why would an ILE try to engage vulnerable function? Because it's being expected to and forced by society. And what normally happens is that they can use extroverted sensation, usually when blocked with introverted logic, okay, that can work all right. But as soon as it's in its full-on superego blocking with introverted ethics, extroverted sensation fails. Annihilate is not going to be able to exercise or accumulate power by relying on their relationships of trust.
I agree. If it depends how much the role being performed, what they're asked to do, requires the introverted ethics with the force and stoics.
Okay, no, fair enough. There is more of a situational component to it than there is, say, with the ego block. No, I think that is more reasonable.
So what I have here, so this is for the revision ring, and then on the next slide I have Andre's thoughts on the translation, sort of his little improvements to the, because this is just the Google Translate.
Okay, just to confirm, Andre is not a person I know. I know an Andre. I'm not sure if it's the same Andre.
No.
Okay, good. If it's that Andre, I think he's been very busy. He's been doing something which I have no idea about. No, fair enough. Okay. So what are you going to show me? Sorry.
Right, so yeah, the revision ring, and again, you've got your vertical blocking.
Yeah.
The execution group.
The execution group. Okay, let's take a look. So supervision cycle basically. No, is it? ILE. Oh yeah, it is. It is a supervision cycle. Okay, and what does it show? Everyone is silent, then tension and suspicion is felt. Seem to be looking for each other's flaws. Okay. One of the most negative groups. Yeah. So we've established, Ben, right, that the most negative, well, we haven't established, but this experiment seems to be showing that the most negative collections are supervision, but that the benefit cycle isn't very good either. It's quite uncomfortable. That's what this experiment suggests.
But it is, but in terms of getting tasks done, what have we got here? Mobilizing effect on the participants. It gives them energy. This is due to a mobilizing effect on the participants.
Okay.
Whereas you get a draining effect with the supervision ring.
Fair. But how about comparing that to the quadra? What do the quadras say? I think I remember it saying something sort of similar, but better. You can feel the mobilization of forces, security, confidence, understanding. Such a group is an energy whole. The rhythm of communication is calm.
An energy whole.
But it's calm measured. Due to the activation relationship, some stress arises. Thanks to this, all members of the group are constantly involved, including the general information energy flow. So it's both energized and it's also quite calm and actually pleasant. This is the best of both worlds, Ben. So why are we looking at the benefit cycle as this bee's knees?
Well, because that is frequently, again, in terms of those relationships where you want to get something done rather than the focus on comfort.
But no, not just focus on comfort. You can see there is an energy hole, mobilization of forces, some stress arises. The fact that all members of the group are constantly involved, including the general information energy flow. This is getting things done, Ben.
Well, one of the things is that now this is one of these presuppositions that one of the presuppositions Viktor makes is that you have to base these models on an asymmetric relationship so that you have some directionality to it. And so your only options are supervision and benefit. So, Jack, I would like you to come up with a model based around quadras.
We have one. It's called Model A.
That's based around the supervision ring.
It's not based around supervision ring. It just happens to block the information elements together in such a way where you go around like this in a supervision ring.
Yeah, and it's also, it's in the theory though, isn't it? That is it the top
So
one goes.
All you'd have to do in that case is take extroverted intuition, introverted logic, then extroverted ethics, then introverted sensation. But then you don't have blocking, and then it becomes not so useful.
Right. So
we don't need to put everything together like this. We already have. We can see valued and subdued. We can see them. They're alternating rows in Model A. It doesn't need to. I don't understand why everything needs to be put together to show a particular cycle. And anyway, quadra isn't a cycle.
No, it isn't.
No. So why would you want to put it in the cycle?
Well, exactly. If you're trying to, wait a minute, Model A tries to model the flow of information.
This experiment very clearly showed there is flow, even with a quadra. It doesn't need to be a circle of asymmetries to be a flow.
Yeah, but you have that. Yeah, but in the arrangement of Model A, you have the supervision ring in each block. Well, not block. In the mental ring and the vital ring.
Okay, fine. Yes.
And so there's two. If you want to do a flow, there's two ways of doing it. And Model G horizontally has the benefit ring, and vertically has the supervision ring for information. So now, if you want it a little bit better English, this is Andre's improvement of the same text.
Improvement of the same text. So scientific experiment. Improved. How improved? What do you mean by improved?
He's just slightly improved the wording.
Okay, he's just translated it better.
Yeah.
Okay. A homogeneous group of 4 people, super and social control represented. According to participants, this is a group of perpetual execution. Communication is difficult. If anyone is silent, then tension, even suspicion, is felt. Participants seem to be looking for each other's something in orange. False. Hang on, this is supervision again. Hang on, let's look at benefit. Hang on. A homogeneous group of 4 people, relations to super ego and social order, social benefit are presented. There is some tension in the group. Interpersonal, thank you. Communication is diminished. Diminished. Feelings of emotional and intellectual balance. Okay. There is a feeling of excess of energy compared to other groups. Communication is not exhausting. It is comfortable enough, but there's no sense of security as in quadra. The topics of conversation are almost unchanged. All participants note some specific tension in this group. Communication in pairs almost always fails. Almost always fails. Only when all together, communication is possible. Joining such a group after a quadra gives a sense of stability. Joining such a group after a quadra gives a sense of stability. So you have to be in a quadra first and go into one. Okay, such a group after quadra gives a stability as long as the communication does not last more than 20 to 30 minutes. The mobilizing effect on the participants. Anything longer causes exhaustion. Rest in such a group is difficult, as participants find it difficult to relax. So some flow, if it's unsustainable. See, it sounds to me like you're basically overcharge your computer and it's short-circuited.
Well, and it's like, I mean, you talk about the role function being situational. You can only do it for short amounts of time.
Yeah, fair, but it's not. I don't see why it's an ideal. I would say is quite, sustainable. Is it not? Yes, it's sort of like, I don't know, like an information orgasm, or an energy orgasm. Only lasts.
Actually, there is one like that, but it's a little bit weird. Okay. There was when they put 8 types from this, like say all result types and all process types. Then you actually got that. it was like an information energy orgasm, and they all got on well, apparently.
Okay, so basically, here's my difficulty, Ben. I came into this, right? I'm glad that you have pulled out the stops here and getting us a methodology. And I am impressed by that you found something which is clear, which we can present. So I'm going to give you credit where it's due on that. But I came here thinking about what is needed for us to have a good justification for breaking away of following the functional dichotomy definitions and deductions in the ordering of Model G, to instead ordering it based on what looks good for the different roles and representing that benefit cycle flow. And I thought that the requirement was to be that if looking at this empirical experiment, that the benefit cycle was clearly, the better outcome. It had something superior to it compared to, say, Quadra. Instead, it looks like something which over-energizes and short circuits, and maybe for a small amount of time that may be more productive, but it's not productive in the long run.
We're going to have to look at more experiments with benefit relations.
Oh no, certainly we need more experiments, but I think it also makes more sense in this then that what you have is you have too much energy, not enough energy, really unpleasant, not going anywhere, and then the ideal being the Quadra. So actually, this experiment provides evidence for not having just a benefit cycle. It actually does down the benefit cycle in favor of Quadra.
There's a wrinkle in the next experiment when they did ring of progress.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's look at that.
Okay, that's this one.
Okay. The rings ring of progress. Of great interest, it includes two parallel rings of social order benefit. Such a combination gives an interesting effect. So two parallel rings, so extroverts and introverts, like externality and internality.
Yeah, so basically it's almost like a representation. It's almost like an organism, 8 people that are one organism.
Although they're not really 8 people, they're 2 sets of 4 people.
Well, they're all together though.
They're all together.
Yeah, it's a group of 8 because it's so they're all left. They all say result types or all process types.
Right. So it's not really but then you can't really say it's 2 rings together, because those rings they're also interacting with each other and going across and diagonal and all the rest.
Well, if we go through what it says,
it's just an 8 type jumble. But okay, that's good. So okay, so long as when you put together all process types or all result types together, to adapt for a while, the rings seem to ignite each other. Extroverts reveal introverts and make them more active. The degree of activity of both is approximately the same. There is mobilization of forces, strong intellectual dominance, emotions manifest and fade into the background, willingness to make decisions and joint action with a focus on practice, feeling of increased interest in everything. Okay, and it has the control, I imagine.
I don't know.
I mean, it
should do.
It better do. I mean, if you see, you put eight people of 8 types together, right? And they all got far more energized. How can you show it's not just because there are more of them together, rather than because it's actually a very careful, sophisticated pair?
I mean, if I was designing an experiment, I wouldn't do it around conversations. I would try and do it around tasks.
Fine. Look. Fine. Yeah, it's not ideal in terms of the methodology. Fair enough. I'm being charitable here. But what I can't be charitable on is when there's no control. You just got a single experiment, and you therefore cannot demonstrate that this is not just because there are more people talking at the same time.
Well, this is what they did, and I would go to greater pains and think about it and try to have all those things. Yeah. Try to have like double blind and try to have it nicely set up. but it requires resources.
Yes, but it requires resources. They managed to do one. They just do another.
No, yeah, but you see, the thing is, though, I personally think that given when this was done, and they had more resources, they should have had more elaborate experiments and had the whole thing laid out in terms of the methodology, and it be reproduced.
Okay, Ben, this is where I am now. Okay, so just taking types of 4 together, if I'm very charitable and I believe all their assumptions, then I can find evidence that the benefit cycle isn't the most energizing of the various groups of 4. First point. Second point, if you then put things together exactly like Model G would suggest, with 8 different groups together and 2 benefit cycles working in parallel, a long process or a long result, I have diddly squat because I don't have a control.
Yeah, but do you know what I did, though, from a semi-empirical point of view, is what I did is I compared what the types are good at in the benefit rings, and there seemed to be a lot of complementarity in those things. Okay. So for example, if you Iley is a good communicator. Do you agree that Iley is a good communicator?
They're a reasonably good communicator,
especially of ideas.
Yes, they're good at communicating ideas.
Right.
EIE
So
is also very good at communicating ideas.
Pardon?
EIE is also very good at communicating.
Right, yeah, right. And so if we look at the Rexes, as I call them, the right extroverts, and so so you've got the role, and would you say that EIE is good as a teacher?
It depends. If they want trying to inspire as a teacher, or you're trying to teach factual information as a teacher. Depends on the individual, of course. We're heavily generalizing, but in general terms, I expect a teacher to have a bit more extroverted logic.
Right. Okay. So I actually did a graph on this. It's all the way up here. Is that it? Yes, that's it. So I was looking at roles. What is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Educator. So
okay, but Ben, can we just pause and just reflect on the fact that this experiment has not achieved any of the goals which you set out to achieve?
For them.
Yeah. This experiment has not adequate, has not.
Well, how about this? We should put our heads together and come up and try to design some experiments. How about that?
I think that's a great idea.
Right.
Great idea. I've had one idea, which is about psychological asymmetry.
Go on.
So the idea for that was that you have experiments which are related to each particular information element. And you have people take, say, a group of 4 of these experiments along rationality or along irrationality. So say an extroverted logic experiment, an introverted logic experiment, an extroverted ethics experiment, and an introverted ethics experiment. These are not experiments, these are exercises of a rational nature. Now, and then you do their Z scores. You make it so that you can take standard deviations, you can see variance, right? And you compare their Z scores as a result. If it's the case that a person's highest Z score in one, say extroverted logic, then for socionics to work, for psychological asymmetry to work, then their lowest Z score would be introverted ethics, with the other 2 somewhere in the middle. And if you can do that as well with the irrational version. If we can consistently show that pattern, that is a solid.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I would say to people who are about Jungian type, is that we can say, yes, but look, it's not just random. When somebody has these traits, this property, it entails this other one. And so, and that would be the entailment as well, where it's like the strong ethics entails weak logics, or however you want to. But what I did with this, I was looking at the complementarity between the social roles in thinking about social mission and social adaptation. Now, don't explode when I say this. What I did, do you promise not to explode?
Explode in which sense? Combust?
Right. Combust. So,
I won't combust, I promise you won't.
Okay. So, if somebody is an educator,
yes.
so someone in the teaching realm, and they've got these various roles, do you think a good school teacher needs to be able to supervise the pupils?
I think a good teacher does need to be in a position of seniority over their pupils. Yes, in that sense, supervise makes sense.
Right.
Well, please don't tell me you're going to then say they need to be the supervisor type, with the students being supervisees. You're not going to
or how about this? Say you're in charge of somebody and you're supervising them.
Yes.
When they do something wrong, you have to tell them how to do it the right way. So you have to switch to educator. And then also we said with the educated, say you've got, now I've framed ENTP as the debater, because as you've shown, most ILEs are good debaters. So those are useful communication skills for a teacher.
I mean, an SLE is also a good debater.
Right.
An LIE.
So who's a good debater?
I think SLE can be a very good debater.
Yes, SLE is a good debater.
LIE can be quite good.
Because they are in another ring, and they usually get the role of the promoter. Right. But that's different. Anyway, so then we got out of the SFs, for educator being able to perform and hold the attention of the children would also be useful. Now, all of these 4 useful things, they're all in the same benefit ring. How about that?
Okay, supervisor, inspector, promoter, crafter. No, hang on, no, that's club. Hang on, where is it? I'm trying to look for it here.
Remember, these are roles. These are not types. These are social roles.
Okay. So, debater, ILE. Okay. Debater, is it supervisor? Right. Debater, supervisor.
Supervisor being LSE.
Okay. Debater, supervisor, performer, and where's the NF? I can't see it. Reconciler.
No. I mean, you were looking at the educator as the NF.
Oh, I guess then it's very difficult to follow this table. Where's okay? So you're trying to. So you've given names to types, and you put them in a benefit cycle. Okay. What demonstrate?
What does this demonstrate?
Yes, what does it demonstrate?
Right, okay, so you know these names of these types?
Yes.
These are the Kersey role variants. And they actually go into a benefit ring. Now, they only do it for the extroverts, but they actually go into complementary roles. And this is important because the social adaptation shift is complementary to the social mission. And I made a lot of notes on this, on a lot of graphics, but you didn't want to go through them. I did it especially for ESFJ.
It looks like you surprised the introverted thinker. It's one of our commenters. But so you're saying you've taken the Kersey roles.
Yes, because he looked at social roles, and Viktor is also looking at social roles, because that's the point of social mission and social adaptation.
Okay, so in other words, just by ignoring Socionics types now and going just Kersey roles, and then treating those as if they're in a benefit cycle, like in Socionics, but you get some sort of coalition of names, which sort of intuitively makes sense.
Well, but these roles, the point here is looking at complementary roles. And as I've said, if you're looking at somebody in the teaching role, they need to be able to supervise, they need to be able to communicate, and need to be able to hold attention. If you're a supervisor, you need to be able to tell people how to do it right. And you need to be able to communicate. Now, usually, what's interesting is there's a greater amount. Wait a minute. There's a greater amount of complementarity within the roles of the superego pairs. So, for example, educator with supervisor.
So you call the ILE an educator?
No, I called ILE debater.
Debater. You call the ILE a debater. Okay. Why is the debater the best role you could possibly give to this type? I mean, okay, fine.
Well, okay, okay. Is that the best? Okay. Out of all the types, is ILE the best debater?
I don't know how to substantiate that.
Well, from your anecdotal experience.
From my anecdotal experience, again, I don't know how to substantiate that. I don't shy away from debates. Eric from Talking with Famous People doesn't shy away from debates.
He's a debate coach.
But then you look at, say, Ben Shapiro, not an ILE, LIE. He's very much a debater. I think there are, well, there are multiple examples of people who are great debaters of different types. So this idea that ILE is the debater is a very questionable assertion. And I wouldn't be surprised to suggest that all of these names are probably very questionable assertions.
Oh, I remembered something as well. All of the types in the Rexes, they're all the 0 types for each level. So, for example, the 0 type at the psychological level is EIE. The 0 type at the physiological level is LSE. The 0 type of the intellectual or informational level is ILE. And the 0 type of the social level is SEE.
Right. Okay. So what does 0 mean?
Wait, it's just a point of reference for it. And it actually became, it was actually one of these things which came out in the integral types of certain relationships. So, for example, when they looked at duality, Ausra said that duality was the most comfortable relationship.
That's debatable.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It is for, and this is the thing is there's 4 different levels for each of the relationships, and it's an integral type. It would have to be a separate hangout on integral types.
Fair enough. I'm just, okay. This looks. I'm not sure how this would be an experiment.
Right.
This looks to me like you're playing with different names and applying a heavy.
Well, I'm looking at social roles, something that's empirical. We can actually go, how well does this go with this? So I'll ask you, what is the role? Because you love quadras. What is the role of ESE in the alpha quadra, in that group of 4?
To keep up the positive emotionality.
And what about in terms of like what they would bring to the event, bring to the party physically?
Positive emotionality, which may involve more laughter, more physical movement, much more extrovert, but it comes in there. It could have more parties and games, organization of parties and games.
What made you say organization?
Well, because they want to make things happen and set things up so that people enjoy themselves.
Right. So hold that thought, organization. So what we have then is, if you look at the superego type of ESE, entrepreneur, LIE, they are also about coordination. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you that graphic that I had all the way up here, but never got time, never got the opportunity to show. Right. We're looking at roles, and then I got it all marked up. I've got all the similarities from their point of view with this superego pair. So you said there about organizing. You did say organizing.
But Ben, I would say organizing for an EIE. I'd use it for an LSE. I use it even for an LSI in a different way. Making things happen, putting things on. Now, EIE and ESE, more making things happen, putting things on for people to enjoy or have some sort of emotional experience from. I don't think EIE is less inclined towards organization, although it'll be more in an abstract way. And I think LSE is probably the most obvious organizer. So I don't see why benefit cycle comes in here. This is cherry picking. Really,
this is because you've got social mission and social adaptation. So it makes sense to me that when you're going to do a social adaptation shift, then the role should be complementary to the social mission.
The role should be complementary to the social mission.
Yes, and so what we got to then do is ask ourselves, what is ESE good at?
What is ESE? So sorry, what do you mean by the social mission? Just to be we're clear.
Well, the way I see a social mission is it's pretty much Gulenko's equivalent of a role variant based on the two strongest functions.
Okay,
so social role,
leading and demonstrative placed together.
Right.
So you're saying that extroverted logic for an ESE should suit the pursuit of extroverted ethics and extroverted sensation in Model G.
And so what I did is I looked at things like
yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't necessarily agree with the pursuit of the demonstrative function, but I do believe it makes sense that the role function should suit the pursuit of the leading function. I think that is straightforward.
Right. What about, so we had this, there's this bit here. Now, in the actual graphic,
yes,
it got put under SI. So this is for ESE. Loves to make gifts, serve others, and is a perfect event and leisure organizer. A low-key leadership role because folks are being told how to help. I imagine that's how it's going to go by, because things have to be organized. We've got to do this, we've got to do that, you can do this and all this. And anyway, and I think it is the jolly organizer. This is a small-scale version of the role of coordinator mobilizer of resources. Think CEO.
Okay, so one thing I'd say to this is, why can't it be the case that the ESE is blocking their role extroverted logic with their introverted sensation in the vertical block? Why is it LIE-ish?
Wait a minute, say that again.
And the same way we talked about vertical blocking before, why isn't it just that the ESE, in creating a very positive social experience, is using their extroverted logic with introverted sensation to organize things in the here and now to make people enjoy themselves? There's no strategic element to this.
Right. Well, I'm sort of comparing it at the level of, if you compare it at the level of whole type, what I'm saying is you can see here that what it's about is, you can see that ESE is a good provider of resources. You see, the reason I asked you about the quadra is I thought you might say things like, because in the past you've said, the Alpha SS will provide all the food and all of the things for the Alpha NTs. You have said things like that in the past.
I may have talked about things more simplistically in the past. Fair enough.
So, and do you agree that ESE is good at providing resources?
What do you mean by resources?
Well, food, the essentials of life.
I think they are. Yes, I think there is certainly a trope, and I think it's one which is justified by a great deal of anecdote, that ESEs will be likely to provide lots of food and make sure people are well fed.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Typical Jewish mother stereotype.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So that's that role here. Providers work to furnish others with the necessities of life, to serve others, to see to their welfare, to make sure they're well provisioned and part of the group. His outgoing public role can be acted out in the form of the banker, benefactor, other roles. So then what I'm looking at complementarity between this and this, the coordinator, and it comes together here in the event and leisure organizer, where they're going to have to do a bit of this directive coordinating of resources.
Ben, I just want to, sorry for interrupting you again, just one thing. I think we are, well, for people who aren't strong in extroverted logic, this has been an absolute rainforest of information. And I am worried that people are burning out here.
Okay.
I'm also worried that my bladder is filling up here. I think we should reach a point quickly on this.
Right. Okay. I will finish with this then. So this is something about this is about the shift of ESE to act a little bit like what LIE is good at, not like the type of what they're good at, and what they're good at is coordinating resources. So,
right.
Do you agree that LIE is good at coordinating resources?
LIE?
Yeah.
Not
in the CEO role.
Not as good as LSE. I wouldn't say they're more strategic focused than resource focused.
Right.
They can do it, but it's not like their thing. The logistical side of things, right? That's pragmatist area. So
yeah.
ESP can do a bit of that for social reasons, and LIE, well, they can do more of the organizing from a strategic point of view. They can do, well, they may try to use extrovert sensation, but they don't have much introvert sensation. Actually, the logistical side for an LIE may be their weaker point.
Right. So what you notice is when you read, say, a block like this of Viktor's, is that this will look like a smaller scale version of LIE. And now I'll go through these little bits because I know you want to wind up. Yeah. These two functions, TE plus and NE minus, are in the social mission block of TENX, i.e. entrepreneur, LIE, in humanitarian socionica. Named entrepreneur, but who would argue that TENX enacting the role of CEO, well, who would argue against them enacting it well? ESE is in the same supervision ring, information metabolism, and social benefit ring, energy metabolism, as LIE. Oh yes, the energy metabolism is shown in function-related task execution, e.g., performing a heavy TE-related task shows the information and energy to enact it was there. Compare LII, who due to lack of energy for TE application, few would know has high information metabolism for TE. It is easier to see the energy metric of a function applied than to see TE info metabolism in the TINX's head. See the fine print in the inflation avoidance block. When FE plus and SE minus cannot get the job done, ESE can switch to TE plus and NE minus. Usually the role enacted by the superego type is complementary. ESE can play provider supplier and the TENX can play coordinator mobilizer. So you can see how both types are good at moving resources. This complementarity is why the text in the social adaptation block frequently reads like a smaller scale version of the text in the social mission block of the superego type. E.g., role TE plus here above reads like a smaller scale version of lead TE plus and TNX. TNX profile, an enterprising person who quickly moves from words to action, tends to pursue its goals with great determination and energy. Over to you.
It's not very convincing.
Oh, and then the other bit here, where you were saying that they should act more like the activator.
That's like,
right.
I can play the part of Bugs Bunny. Therefore, I'm very good at running away from foxes.
Well, it depends on where you pay it.
I mean, it's very. I mean, it's questionable if I can even play the part of Bugs Bunny.
Right.
What is the reason for thinking this? What is the model A?
So you think, so one of the things you bring up is that a person is more likely to, you said that I said that a type will change to their superego rather than activate. I did not say that. I said that they change, that they can enact a role that is well performed by their superego, just like in the case of providing resources and coordinating resources.
But the entire basis of these roles are very questionable. And then many other types in the middle who perform those roles better.
Well, we can go over that in future. So this bit is comparing the two. No, but this is where I have some TI reasoning for you as well, based on things that you accept. So about what would happen. To enact this is for ESE. To enact ILE typical role with ILE thinking would require two impossibilities: changing rationality irrationality from EJ linear assertive rationality to EP flexible active irrationality, changing form of cognition. infometabolism, from vortex synergetic, left positivist dynamic to causal determinist, right positive static, which would require a reversal of all charges. FEX would and have to change charges, but when it would act, say, like the superego, it doesn't have to change the form of this cognition, and it doesn't have to change the Gulenko temperament. So, but enacting an ENTJ typical role, coordinating resources, the role would allow ESFJ to stay in its social adaptation block. Same as that, which uses role-playing T plus and non-sharing mind. NB, the TN uses social adaptation, has the same form of cognition, same Gulenko mindset. Weak functions of the ESE would not be required to enact the coordinator social role, but in a different type of relationship, they are going to clash on each other. And this is where we get back to that the issue with relations of social benefit.
But Ben, what I don't get is this. LSE, are they not very good organizers of resources? Are they not perhaps the best type for organization of resources?
Well, they've not got the strategic vision.
Neither
with
does
the weak NI.
Neither does ESE.
No, but that's why I said they're a smaller scale version.
Why do you need a weaker a strategic vision for the organization of resources? The organization of resources is not a strategic thing; it's a logistical thing.
Well, that's the thing. If it depends how you're doing it. If you're doing it on a logistical level, ESE and LSE are good at that. That's the logistical intellect.
I'm sure, Ben, that any type is very good at organizing the resources in its particular sphere or field. But we're talking specifically, I imagine, about resources, and I imagine with a concrete things which we're putting together, managing. There's lots of detail involved in the here and now, and lots of energy and bustle required to get it done. I would say that LSE fits that perfectly, and ESE can fit that rather well insofar as it has some access to extroverted logic and has the introverted sensation and extroverted sensation already there, and that the LIE actually struggles with a sort of logistical aspect because they're more, while they do the organizing, they have a vulnerable introverted sensation.
But in saying that you would like ESE, these types have, yes, it's within the same temperament, but
hang on, I just want to.
You gotta go now.
So
have we got questions?
Yeah, well,
maybe you could put some questions on screen.
Is saying all organization of resources not necessarily logistical. Yes, depending how you define resources.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you are organizing resources towards a long-term strategic objective, that's better for the NT club, especially for the gamma NTs.
Yes, but what are these resources? Are they strategic resources? Are they tactical aspects? When you think of resources, it implies logistical. I think it does.
Well, I mean, it was in terms of people, and if you think of a CEO, a CEO, you know, when we did this bit here about the event planner, that's just one event. That's not got your long-reaching strategic objectives that, say, a CEO has. With the LIE is a lot better at doing.
Fair enough, but what I don't understand is what makes the LIE, the ESE, the LSE, and the EIE. Why aren't they all just good at organizing resources in various contexts of what resources is defined to be?
Well, they are all EJs. They are all linear assertive.
Yeah,
but usually there's an influence of club on here. So you see here like the jolly organizer, and it's an event organizer. The point is that it's
no, that makes sense. So yeah, ESE is a jolly organizer. The LSE is the organizer. Yeah.
But you see, that's another thing. In Model G, each quadrant is a representative from one of the clubs. So you got SF, NT, SF. That's not right. No, that's not right because this is a combined. But it would be if it was the proper Model G, it would be each one because this is two to crash together.
Oh, yeah, but that's not model G. I can see that.
Yeah, because I got that wrong. Because if it was like this,
whoa,
then you could see there SF, NT, NF, ST.
Okay. You're pointing to connections with things, but I don't think those connections between things have much value at this point.
So again, you've got this idea of adaptation. And so when you read the block, it looks like a smaller scale, and I've made the connections between the different bits. So we've got ESE here. Easily interacts with people in B2. And then here, you've got the role FE, where they act like a smaller scale ESFJ, but they're doing it for sort of extroverted logic reasons, like to get contacts and things like that.
Sorry. They act like a smaller scale ESFJ by being cheerful and optimistic. His sense of humor is inexhaustible. Its jokes may be perceived as inappropriate at times.
Yeah, it's not a very good version of it. That's what I mean by smaller scale.
But Ben, LIEs don't sound like that. They're not. They can be optimistic. They're not about infecting people with a positive mood. They're not into that. They're gammas. The only type in gamma that could be like that is an SEE. LIEs are so focused on the practicality, how things are working, and actually trying to look at as being more tough with their extroverted sensation. Why would they spending the time being cheerful and optimistic and having?
Well, I mean, it's playing a role.
Humor.
They're playing a role in order to make contacts.
But when they're playing a role in order to make contacts, why they wouldn't be able to play that role with very good introverted sensation, which is what is needed for the more positive and more emotionality.
It's like I said, in terms of playing the role that ESE is good at. So we could say one of the roles they're good at is, say, host. And so this is why you have these things with Peter. Right then. So
one of my best friends in LIE, he never once invited me round to his house.
Well, maybe.
I'm a better host than he is.
Well,
I'm not in the benefit cycle with ESC.
Well, maybe this is
He turned me down. He didn't want to come to us.
Well, maybe if you think, because frequently LIE, somebody who resembles LIE, frequently they are either Enneagram 8 or Enneagram 3. And the Enneagram 3 is very much a social networker.
I'm not even sure of that. I mean, I know some LIEs. Take Peter Bartle, right? Peter Bartle, he says he does not identify as a single.
Well, I think he's ILI, but that's a different matter.
Well, maybe he doesn't identify with a single Enneagram type. But okay, so, well, I think his problems with his suggestive function are even more apparent than his problems with mobilized function. But anyway, let's not talk about Peter on this. So, this is the thing. I find it balmy, utterly balmy, to start saying that super egos have some sort of special connection which allows us to play the roles of them. And going through this exercise of the last half an hour, you haven't been able to show why it isn't balmy. And also, the last 2 hours, you have not been able to show why Model G has either 1, logical coherence in the metaphysical sense, or 2, an empirical justification for its use of the benefit cycle over the quadra.
Well, we'll let the audience decide.
In terms of how many things you've achieved in this conversation in 2.5 hours, there hasn't been success in this regard.
Well,
I wanted
achieve, so you say. It's not really up to. It's not really up to us. The audience has the final say, and audiences change.
There's no okay.
So each given audience, they have the final say.
Fair enough. It's for the people to watch and make up their own minds. Fair enough.
Right, and if they want to go over my channel and want to look elsewhere and find out more about Model A and Model G and the various comparisons and what actually gives more explanatory power and leverage for you, then all well and good.
Yep, I say let the people decide and we'll see what happens. But Ben, thank you so much for all your time. It's been a long time and you've given a lot for this conversation, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you've gone to such efforts to put together these slides. And I'm sorry,
even though we didn't get through the ones that, like, say with I was annoyed that we never got through the ones with ILI and this one. These are very complementary, these two. Look at this.
SEI.
SEI is so risk avoidant. Prepare yourself for any eventuality. Always prefers to have a
well, I don't know. I'm stooping to anecdote here, but the reason I'm living out in Oxfordshire is because my SEI fiance, and most people would agree she's SEI, decided I want to live in Oxfordshire, even though it's going to cost several £100s in rent when we could have been living with our parents. That's not risk averse. You know, I don't think SEIs are necessarily risk. They're risk averse in some ways. She'll avoid potentially awkward conversations.
Right.
But in terms of the factual long-term application, she'll be almost blind to that at certain points. If she just wants to be in a certain area and likes the feel for a place.
What about this kind of stuff here? Does she like a rigorous procedure, or? Well,
she is a physiotherapist, and she'll have to have a rigorous procedure. So there is some of that. She's very good logistically, I should say.
Well, bully for Kersey, because he named them after them after that logistical intellect.
Interesting.
So in fact, in Kersey, your future wife would be categorized as a logistical accommodator.
Yeah, that could work. I don't mind that so much. Ben, thank you so much.
Right then,
I got to go to the loo, but it's been a pleasure having this discussion. It's been in many different directions, and I feel it certainly covered lots of points, lots of information people to take from this.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your evening.
Bye bye, folks.